This is CBN NewsWatch.
Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, are more attacks coming to Sri Lanka? That's the fear as the nation is still in mourning over the horrific bombings on Easter Sunday. More than 253 people were killed, and they worry that more attacks may be coming. That's the latest from the Prime Minister there. Our Heather Sells is in the newsroom with more. Heather?
Yes, Wendy, in two major cities in Sri Lanka right now, it is very quiet. Residents and office workers are indoors. The shops are closed, and there is concern that more attacks are coming on the way, with the U.S. Embassy warning that terrorists could again target places of worship this weekend. The Prime Minister of Sri Lanka issued a stark warning today.
Well, they've rounded up a lot of suspects, but there are still some of the active people on the run. They may be having explosives with them, or they may have hidden the explosives. So we have to find the suspects as well as the explosives. So that's still on.
So concerned about more people on the run. Last Sunday's bombings were one of the world's worst terrorist attacks since 9/11, killing 253 people and wounding hundreds more. But there's also a sense that Americans don't get that Christians around the world are so targeted. Doug Bandow, an analyst at the Cato Institute, wrote, Christianity's dominant role in American culture has obscured the fact that it is the most persecuted faith globally. And Emma Green, an Atlantic writer, says that Easter has become a, quote, anniversary of death, noting Easter attacks on Christians in Egypt and Nigeria in the last several years. Wendy?
Thanks, Heather. Well, tell us about the number of people that were actually killed, because we just heard that that number has actually dropped. Is that right?
Right. A little unusual. It dropped from 359 to 253, nearly a third. Authorities are saying that the blast damaged some bodies beyond recognition, that caused confusion and made accurate identification more challenging. Back to you, Wendy.
Interesting. All right. Thank you so much, Heather. Well, joining me here in studio to discuss the latest in Sri Lanka is CBN's senior international correspondent George Thomas and Dr. Daniel Mark, assistant professor of political science at Villanova University. Thanks for being with us, gentlemen.
Good to be here.
Well, Dr. Mark, we'll start. I should mention Dr. Mark is the former chairman of the United States Commission on International Religious Freedom. George, let's begin with you. Actually, we're hearing that churches and mosques have decided to cancel their services indefinitely. What's prompted this?
Well, as Heather just mentioned, Sri Lanka's Prime Minister said today he's very concerned that there are several individuals on the run. Some of them may still have explosive devices, and so they are telling residents of Colombo, of Jaffna, across the country to be on high alert. And in a very unusual move, as Heather mentioned, the U.S. Embassy in Colombo made a very specific warning, saying that houses of worship this coming weekend may be a target. So they have to be on alert, warning U.S. citizens to be aware of that, as well as the British government has issued a similar warning to its citizens in the country. So again, this country is very much on high alert as they continue to round up individuals. I think close to about 60, 65 individuals have been rounded up so far. But the threat is still very, very real, Wendy.
All right. Dr. Mark, how would you compare the media's coverage of the massacre of Muslims in New Zealand to attacks of Christians in Sri Lanka?
Well, it's been pretty different. I think we've seen more coverage of the attacks in New Zealand and more intense coverage, which is not to say there wasn't some reporting on Sri Lanka. Of course, every major news organization picked it up at first. I think this is rooted in an idea that Christians are oppressors and not the oppressed. That's, of course, the liberal narrative in the West, the idea that Christians have the privilege and Christians have a history of oppressing everybody else. And it confounds that narrative when we recognize that the vast numbers of millions of Christians outside of the West suffer persecution in too many countries. In fact, Christians suffer persecution in more countries than any other religion on the planet. And it's difficult for the media to get their minds around it. As the New York Times conservative columnist pointed out, the Washington Post put the focus on the anger among conservative Christians in America over the attacks, as opposed to the horrific tragedy that occurred and the deaths of the people.
It's hard to imagine how they come up with that. All right, George, moving to you. You've been to Sri Lanka. What are your sources in the country saying about how Christians are coping just days after the attacks.
Yeah, Wendy, I just received an email from the superintendent of the Assemblies of God in Sri Lanka, and he said, according to him, intelligence sources actually previously warned some of the church leaders of such an attack, but they never expected the destruction to be so huge. This is also important. They've sent out a prayer alert to the entire country saying that the evangelical and Pentecostal churches are standing in solidarity with the Catholic Church in this time of tragedy. They're saying that they want to have a spirit of unity as a witness to the nation. Obviously, you see the funeral services that are taking place, the agony on the faces of so many people who have lost loved ones. They're hoping that these funeral services will be a witness for forgiveness and reconciliation, and also giving hope to other religious communities. Obviously, this is a very, very trying time, but the church across the board, Protestant, evangelical, Catholic, they're all together, banded together, united in this.
Well, Dr. Mark, let me ask you, as a member of the Jewish community, why do you think most Americans don't understand how much suffering Jews and Christians worldwide endure for their faith?
Sure. Well, part of it, I think, has to do with what we just discussed, and that's the media coverage. If the Sri Lanka attacks got the same level of coverage as the New Zealand attacks, people and everything else that's going on, too, the persecution of Christians in China and many, many other places, people would know about it more. It's hard for people to follow everything that's going on in the world. And if the mainstream media doesn't cover it much, people aren't going to know. I think another thing about which speaks a little bit to maybe a difference between the Jewish and Christian communities, and it helps, of course, that the Jewish community worldwide is so much infinitely smaller than the Christian community, but there is a real sense of kinship among Jews worldwide. And I can tell you in the kind of synagogues I've attended in my life, if Jews are in trouble, it is a bill to the Jews everywhere else in the world. Certainly in America, American Jews were instrumental in protesting for and fighting for the rights of Jews in the former Soviet Union who were refused exit from there. And I think Christians who, of course, are extremely charitable and extremely caring to people worldwide, could maybe even so take a lesson in this and make sure that on the top of their minds at all times is the persecuted church around the world, which will help them appreciate what we have here too, and also be mindful of how much we need to protect what we have here.
Yeah, that's very good. All right, George, the New York Times ran an opinion piece this week asking, are Christians privileged or persecuted? Where do you think that line of questioning is coming from?
Well, I think it speaks to some of what Dr. Mark has just highlighted, this idea that Christians in America, by and large, compared to Christians in South America, Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, are by and large wealthier. And so this idea is that, well, if you are doing well in America, you are clearly not suffering for your faith. You're not getting beheaded. You're not getting stripped and having electric prods being put to your private parts, and you're suffering for your faith. But that is the wrong way to look at the prism of the suffering church, because the reality is that today, as you know, Wendy, the global south is experiencing an explosion of Christianity. And in that global south, the majority of the Christians are not wealthy, and they are suffering for their faith. And we have got to stand together with them in this moment of crisis.
Absolutely. They need our prayers more than ever. Gentlemen, thank you both so much for your insights.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Well, the father of two of the Easter suicide bombers in Sri Lanka has been arrested on suspicion of aiding his sons. That was the word today from the country's former Navy chief. A nationwide search is underway for the suspected ringleader of the Easter bombings. Authorities say they're looking for Islamist preacher Zoran Hashim, who appeared in an ISIS video. Police say it's unclear if Zoran actually detonated one of the bombs. Anton Sudarshan of the British Pakistani Christians Association of Sri Lanka says Zoran is thought to have gathered with members of the Islamic group called National Tawhid Jamaat just days before the attacks.
3 or 5 people were gathered together to pray for a mission, and they had prayed, and we see the result right now. It is evident. And that is the connection that they had with the ISIS. Mosque leaders, or we call them as imams, who were well-trained, who were well-educated, and they went and they got the ranks in ISIS, and they fought, and some of them died. After the death, only that we came to know that there were also Sri Lankans among ISIS ranks. Maybe they would have found a very special way to return back without even the authorities maybe get to know about it.
And how are Christians responding?
The cardinal of the Catholic Church, and he asked the people and the pious Catholics to calm down, not to hurt or not to do as they have done to us, and to imitate the Christ's love as how he did it on cross.
What can our viewers do?
We should pray first and ask the Holy Spirit to move, and then we should also raise funds and to build up our churches, and to make sure the people, when they enter church, and they to have a very protective and mechanism they are set up to be given the protection, and also the international Christians to pressure on the government of Sri Lanka to make sure our minority Christian groups and their churches to be safe and to let us peacefully worship the Lord, that we believe in Christ and we want to live a peaceful life, and also our rights should be also protected at the same time.
Sudharshan, and how Christians can help the Sri Lankan Church. Watch The Global Lane tonight at 9:30 Eastern Time on the CBN News Channel. Former Vice President Joe Biden officially announced his run for the White House today. Biden posted a video on YouTube early this morning attacking President Trump for his response to the racial confrontation in Charlottesville and saying, quote, "We are in a battle for the soul of the nation."
But if we give Donald Trump 8 years in the White House, he will forever and fundamentally alter the character of this nation. The core values of this nation, our standing in the world, our very democracy, everything that has made America America is at stake. That's why today I'm announcing my candidacy for President of the United States.
The 76-year-old Biden, a lifelong politician, will join Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders as a frontrunner for the Democratic nomination. He says he'll run as an Obama-Biden Democrat. Republicans quickly responded, questioning economic growth under Obama and Biden and attacking Obamacare. We will have more stories like this from our Washington bureau this evening on Faith Nation. You can watch it right here on the CBN News Channel. Well, evangelist Franklin Graham is challenging comments made by another Democratic presidential candidate, Pete Buttigieg. Graham wrote in a tweet, Mayor Buttigieg says he's a gay Christian. As a Christian, I believe the Bible, which defines homosexuality as sin, something to be repentant of, not something to be flaunted, praised, or politicized. The Bible says marriage is between a man and a woman, not two men, not two women. Mayor Pete has been critical of Christian leaders like Vice President Mike Pence, who stand for the biblical definition of marriage. Well, the number of measles cases has officially climbed to its highest level in the U.S. in 25 years. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say 695 cases have been reported in 22 states this year. Health experts say the number of cases is likely to go even higher. Measles is highly contagious and can spread through the air when someone coughs or sneezes. Doctors say the outbreak is due to misinformation that is turning parents against vaccines.
Some of the misinformation is that it causes autism, that the vaccines contain mercury, that the vaccine, that the disease itself will actually protect them from cancer, that the disease themselves will protect them from eczema. Like, these are some of the false things that they're telling to the community, and the community is really eating this up, or feels that this is something that's really important that will then help them.
The measles had been originally declared all but eliminated in the U.S. back in 2000. Well, French police began examining Notre Cathedral today for the first time since last week's devastating fire. Experts from 3 police agencies took samples and began searching for clues to the cause of the massive blaze. They believe the fire was accidental, possibly caused by a short circuit linked to renovation work. Workers told police they did smoke on the job and left behind cigarette butts, but police say it's not clear yet if that was the actual cause. The French government presented a bill Wednesday that would speed up the reconstruction process. Coming up, how Trump's crackdown on Iranian imported oil will affect the U.S. economy and the gas pump price.
CBN presents The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
We're going to talk about some of the incredible promises God has made to his children.
In Pat Robertson's newest teaching, you'll discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation, and see amazing stories of God's promises in action.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Break free from stress and despair.
The Lord doesn't want you to live in fear, but to know the rewards given to those who love God.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I Wills of God, your path to overcoming fear and anxiety.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
Iranian leaders are vowing to respond to President Trump's decision to impose sanctions on countries that import Iranian oil. Iranian President Hassan Rouhani said in comments on his website Wednesday that for Iranians, there is no way except resistance. Other Iranian leaders accusing the U.S. of being hostile and say Trump is playing games. The U.S. announced Monday that they will not renew sanction waivers for 5 countries that receive oil from Iran. Those waivers to Japan, South Korea, Turkey, China, and India expire on May the 2nd. And joining us now to discuss how this will affect the U.S. economy is financial expert Dan Celia. Dan, welcome to the show.
Wendy, it's great to be here. It's good seeing you again.
You too. Well, Dan, what do you think of Trump's decision on these sanctions?
Well, I think it's something that he absolutely has to do. I think it's going to cause a little bit of a problem, though, for us and for our economy, believe it or not. I know it seems so far away. How could this dramatically impact us? I don't know that it'll impact us dramatically, but it is going to impact oil prices, and it is going to impact our price at the pump. So I know that Turkey has already said they are not going to live by these sanctions. They're going to still buy oil from Iran, unfortunately, but we'll see what the other countries do. And basically, this is going to place more demand on a supply that is already a little bit of a concern. Now, I am talking about global demand, global supply. Remember, Wendy, that when we look at oil, it really is a global market. So we're going to have to do some increasing of supply, which will be good for us on one hand, but the global price of oil is going to go up. That is going to impact the price at the pump. And this is not a good time of year for that to be happening. That takes discretionary income out of the pockets of you and I. And that could hurt our economy if it continues to rise, say, up above $3 a gallon.
Well, I know like in places like California, they're already paying about $4 a gallon. So you're saying this could really hurt us at the gas pump.
That's right. You know, the national average gasoline right now, $2.87, and, you know, pushing towards the national average at $3. It takes money out of the economy. So for every penny that gasoline goes up, it takes about $10 million out of the economy. $10 billion out of the economy. That seems like a lot. It is a lot, but we continue to see this happening, and how it takes it out of the economy is it's less money that theoretically you and I are going to spend in the economy because of the higher gas prices.
Well, let me ask you this. Is there a better solution? Was there anything else that President Trump could have done?
No, this is the only thing they're going to listen to. It's the only thing that we've got to push the envelope, and I don't think there was a better solution at all. You know, this is their primary source of income. Oil is all they have, and this is going to have a dramatic impact on them. The problem is now, how do we enforce this? And the only way we can enforce this is to start impacting these countries that are buying if they don't stop buying with the banking system and through the financial system, and putting some stops in what happens from a financial perspective with some of these countries and banks here in America. So it could really have an impact. And one of the things that I am concerned about is China. I get a little concerned at this point of ruffling their feathers when we are about 90% complete on a U.S.-China trade deal, and we don't want to hurt that is for sure, but this may or may not. China gets about 6% of their crude oil from Iran. That's all, 6%. China is also the largest importer of crude oil in the world.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, for instance, in about 6 months from now, if this was indeed a good idea, and we'll have to have you back then. Dan Celia, financial expert, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome, Wendy, anytime.
It's about the competition.
I kind of put that pressure on myself, and I think people had expectations.
It's about overcoming.
We use this phrase all the time, keep chopping, keep practicing hard.
It's about going the distance.
You know, I think as a father, it's my job, you know, to lead. Just be the best husband and father I can be.
Watch Going the Distance with Sean Brown Saturday night at 7:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Woohoo! Hi, Superbook fans. Here's something else you'll love. It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! Whoa!
Millsburg Falls man, come.
Sorry, pardon me. Sorry, excuse me. Ouch!
Are you getting this?
Earn super points to win daily prizes, too. And so much more! Time to get back to my adventures. See you soon. It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
Discover the I wills of God. I will rescue him, protect him, answer him, be with him in trouble, deliver him, honor him, satisfy him with long life, show him my salvation.
What I felt was loved and treasured.
God spared my life twice in 3 days.
The good Lord had given me a second chance.
Call 1-800-700-7000 or visit CBN.com. The I wills of God, the latest teaching from Pat Robertson.
In a number of states, pro-life legislators are advancing laws limiting abortion. One of those states is Indiana. And as Paul Strand reports, lawmakers there are hoping to get the abortion question back in front of the Supreme Court.
Lawmakers like those here in Indiana keep churning out measure after measure to limit abortion, and they keep getting challenged in court. The pro-life forces say the battles are worth it.
That's because a case appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court could affect the whole country. One such case dealing with civil rights was struck down last year by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals.
Indiana is actually the only state that's passed a law that protects unborn children based upon their civil rights, that prohibits abortion based upon a child's color of the skin, sex, national origin, disability, or Down syndrome. So the court has never addressed the civil rights of unborn children before. This is historic.
Indiana's lead attorney at the ACLU says that could potentially open the door for states to limit abortions.
The state of Indiana is saying, prior to viability, we have the right to tell you whether or not you can get an abortion. And once you admit that, then there is no limit to how the state can interfere with that right.
And that's the goal of these Indiana legislators, a fundamental change to Roe v. Wade, the ruling that legalized abortion nationwide.
We believe that if they accept this appeal, it's a clear sign that the Supreme Court is willing to reconsider Roe, and we hope that the end of Roe v. Wade comes from Indiana.
The High Court may also take up another state measure.
Indiana's ultrasound law requires that any woman considering an abortion in Indiana must have the opportunity to see an ultrasound of her unborn baby at least 18 hours before she can have an abortion.
Constitutional law attorney Jenna Ellis says that often changes a woman's mind as she sees the baby and hears its heartbeat.
There is still a fundamental conscience that God gives us, and most women can't negate that and suppress it to the point that they're willing to kill their child.
Falk says that's questionable.
Statistics show that most women, when they review the ultrasound, don't change their mind.
While he sees this law as an unnecessary roadblock, Ellis counters that ultrasounds are crucial.
What the founders said in the Declaration was that truth is self-evident, and that's what we see in ultrasounds. We see the self-evident fact that this is a human being.
If the court takes up either measure, it could mean a change in the country's abortion law. Lawmakers continue to try to save as many lives of the unborn as they can here in Indiana, but they also have their eyes on the big picture, hoping to affect abortion nationwide. Paul Strand, CBN News, Indianapolis.
As the world watches from the outside,
it's a big diplomatic tug-of-war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline, Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
And that's going to do it for this edition of Newswatch. You can find more on the issues that you care about most at cbnnews.com. You can also watch CBN News programs anytime on our CBN News channel.